Chapter 24. The next day I found myself elbow-deep in cleanser, scrubbing a year's worth of dust and spiderwebs from the old dishwasher Daddy had stored in the garage on the off chance the new one went out. After all, they don't make things like they used to. Daddy had used that saying so much it was practically a slogan at my house. Now, with Thomas moved in across the street, it made perfect sense to pass the old appliance along, making Daddy's pack-rat tendencies look less insane. What a single man who ate dinner at our house most nights needed with a dishwasher was beyond me. What was he going to wash, a spoon in a bowl? It would take him a month to fill the thing up. The look on Thomas's face when Daddy had suggested the idea this morning was comical. It was clear Thomas's line of thinking ran right along with my own. Of course, I would get stuck cleaning the stupid thing. Thomas was too busy helping Daddy work on one of the tractors that had broken down, and Mama didn't want Jenny over here too much, afraid she'd think it was okay to cross the street. Giving the white racks a once-over, I decided they were as good as they were going to get. I shut the door and started a cycle, leaning against the counter and letting the cool air blow the damp hairs from my neck. Thomas had installed a window unit in the kitchen this morning. Turning to the sink, I scrubbed my waterlogged hands free of grime and glanced around for a towel. Not seeing one in sight, I suddenly remembered seeing a basket of laundry on Thomas's bed when I'd come in. I headed to the bedroom, drying my hands on a dish towel, and out of pure habit started putting away his laundry. Laundry was the one chore I didn't mind so much, because I could watch TV while doing it. I was halfway finished with the basket before I even realized what I was doing. Great. I'd gone from girlfriend to friend to near hookup, and now I was his maid. Pulling out the top dresser drawer with my arms full of rolled socks, a picture caught my eye. My picture. Why did he insist on keeping that old Polaroid? It was embarrassing. I dropped the socks on top of it and closed the drawer just as the front door opened. Mom had said she was coming back over after putting Jenny down for a nap to make sure the dishwasher wasn't leaking. There'd been so much gunk in the traps the first time we'd run it, the kitchen floor had flooded. Hence me scrubbing my morning away. "It's not leaking this time," I called out as I grabbed the empty basket and held it against the hip of my jean shorts and baseball tee. I wasn't really a Cardinals fan, but the red buttons down the front matched the bikini I'd had last summer, so I'd bought it at a thrift store to use as a cover-up. It nearly covered my shorts. "Good to know," Thomas said, popping the top of a can of Coke. He was covered in sweat and dirt from head to toe, the knees of his worn jeans covered in grass stains. His eyes zeroed in on the basket as he leaned into the door frame of the bedroom. Thankfully, he hadn't mentioned last night, and I sure wasn't going to. "Did you put my clothes away?" he asked, using the bottom of his shirt to clean his face. "You didn't have to do that, Bree. I would have gotten around to it." "I had to stick around to check the dishwasher anyway," I said, turning to the side to get by him and heading to the hall. Sticking the basket on top of his dryer, I shrugged. What else was I going to do? He laughed, working his brow. "I could think of a million things I'd rather do than laundry." "You're welcome," I scowled, plopping down on the couch. If I returned home before the cycle finished and it did start to leak, I'd never hear the end of it. "Thank you," he said thoughtfully, taking the seat next to me and crossing his legs on the coffee table that had also come from my garage. I was trying, and so was he. It wasn't like we could avoid each other, so the friends route it would be. At least that's what I was hoping. I'd just have to avoid being alone with him at night for the time being. My brain seemed to change gears with him at night. Well, not really change gears so much as turn all control over to other parts of my body. Daylight was better. For both of us. It would help even more if he were seeing someone. Well, it would help him. It would most likely kill me, but I'd get through it, and then he wouldn't feel the need to almost kiss me. Not that I was setting him up on any blind dates in the near future. That was for sure. But it was only a matter of time before some girl in town caught his eye. "You stink," I said, crossing my arms over my chest as he scooted down far enough to rest his head on the back of the couch. He didn't, not really. The hint of soap and whatever antiperspirant he wore was still noticeable in the air. He smelled incredible, like always. It would have been easier if he had. "And your hair looks ridiculous on top of your head like a bird's nest," he shot back without so much as turning his head in my direction. I couldn't stop the grin. I knew he hated my hair like this. That's why I'd worn it this way all week. "Don't you have deodorant?" He gave the bun on my head a smack, making it bobble and nearly knocking my hair down. "Don't you have a hairbrush?" I fought a grin. This felt familiar. Pulling the hair tie out, I ran my fingers through my hair, thankful I'd washed it last night. Better? I asked, shaking it out dramatically to ensure it hit his smirked face. I bumped him with my shoulder and leaned back, closing my eyes. It had been a long morning, taking care of Jenny, while he, Daddy, and Mama had installed the dishwasher at daybreak. I could feel myself drifting when Thomas shifted next to me. Do I really stink? I smiled to myself. No, you always smell good. That was way more than he'd asked, but I was too far gone to care at this point. I just needed 15 minutes. 15 minutes. The sun was low in the sky as the last rays of light passed through the open curtains. I stretched into the soft blanket covering my body, glancing around the room to get my bearings. The front door stood open, but the overhead light was turned off. Sitting up, I felt a chill from the air unit blowing softly across my skin from the kitchen. My mouth was parched, and my head felt heavy for sleeping what I knew had been much more than 15 minutes. Folding the blanket over the back of the couch, I shuffled to the kitchen and filled a glass with water from the tap. I just swallowed the last sip when the floor creaked behind me. "Hey, sleepyhead," Thomas said, stepping from the hall with a small white towel wrapped around his waist. Running his hand through his wet hair, he continued, "I was wondering when you were going to wake up." Watching a water drop travel over his abs to be absorbed by the towel, I was certain this was a dream. I was clearly still asleep. The glass slipped silently from my hand and bounced unharmed against the rug I'd placed in front of the sink earlier this morning. No dream. I wasn't as uncoordinated in my dreams. Feeling like an idiot for blatantly ogling him, I quickly grabbed the glass and turned back to the sink. "Sorry I fell asleep," I managed. "I bet Mama was looking for me." "Nah, I told her you were busy here, doing my laundry and whatnot." I turned around in time to see him wink before disappearing into his room. Jackass. "Hey, you want to watch a movie? Maybe eat a pizza?" he called out. "You know no one delivers this far out, right?" Pulling a white t-shirt over a pair of red basketball shorts, he came out, running the towel over his head. "Frozen?" "I've got a couple in the freezer." His bare feet padded over to the freezer and pulled out 2 large square boxes. "It's not delivery, it's," he said, mocking the pizza commercial that seemed to play during every TV break. A movie with him? At night? Alone in his house? Bad idea. "Do you want me to ask Katie to join us?" I asked, watching him tear away the cardboard and plastic from the pizza. Reaching for a pan from the drawer at the bottom of the stove, he looked over his shoulder with a smirk, curving his full lips. "If you'd be more comfortable." If I'd be more comfortable? What was that supposed to mean? Yes, I'd be more comfortable, but it was awfully presumptuous of him to come to that conclusion so quickly, like he was such a stud that I wouldn't be able to keep my hands off him. "I'm comfortable now," I interjected, my hands on my hips. "I just hope you don't put me to sleep again," I added for good measure. He crooked a grin as he set the oven to preheat. "Then no Katie." I took the pizza from him and put it on the cookie sheet. "No Katie. I was only thinking of you anyway, Casanova. That was some good night hug you two shared the other night. Didn't know if you wanted to follow up on that." He choked on the Coke he'd just sipped. "Me and Katie? I don't think so, Breland." My whole name? He was serious. "Not your type, huh?" "My type?" He cocked a brow. His dark tan was more prominent against the white t-shirt when he crossed his arms over his chest. "What about your type? Still talking to that surfer dude you went bowling with?" "He wasn't a surfer. He had on a beach shirt. Whatever. Not the point. Are you still seeing him?" I shook my head, glancing to the stove as the light blinked. "I've been too busy helping my ex-boyfriend with his housekeeping to date lately." Taking the cookie sheet from my hand and placing it in the oven, he ushered me to sit down. "I've got this. Relax." I walked into the living room and flipped on the television before grabbing my blanket and curling back on the couch. If I acted like this whole situation wasn't insane, maybe it wouldn't be. "So," Thomas said, dusting his hands off on his shirt before plopping down next to me like he'd done earlier today. "Is that what I am?" "What?" "An ex-boyfriend." "Well, we never actually broke up, I guess, but it's either that or you have cheated on me like a gazillion times in the past 2 years. He grabbed the remote from my hand and turned on the TV. Trust me, it was nowhere near that many, and no one of any importance. "So what are you up for?" he asked. clearly changing the subject. If memory serves, nothing with too much action and nothing depressing. Good memory. I remember everything, Bree. So do I. The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. I was suddenly hyper-aware of the proximity of his legs to my own. The silken feel of his basketball shorts seemed to be radiating heat wherever they touched. I looked up to find him watching me instead of the rambling news broadcaster. My eyes were transfixed by his, knowing they were privy to the same memorable first touches and feelings that had gotten us here today. I found myself leaning toward him, my eyes moving to his mouth as he wet his lips. A car with a loud muffler drove by just as my eyes moved back to his, bringing reason with it. On second thought, anything is fine with me, I said, shifting back to my previous position. We'll be lucky to find a movie on in the middle of the week. I had cable installed, he winked, gesturing to a large black box on top of the television. Movie channels are free the first month, he added, passing me the TV guide. Ah, yes, Channel 60, I said after a quick peruse. Peering over my shoulder, he saw my movie of choice and laughed humorlessly. I don't think so. Reaching under my arm, he turned to strip away the TV guide, but I knew that move too. I don't think so, cowboy, I teased, holding it out to the side. You invited me over. It's good manners to let me pick. Sitting back with a playful huff, he crossed his arms and said, Fine, chick flick it is. A triumphant smile on my face, I started scanning the channels. It was nearly 10 minutes before the movie was due to start. While I rambled about all the cool channels I wished we had at home, Thomas checked the pizza, coming back with 2 plates and a couple of Cokes. Can I see that? Thomas asked, popping a pepperoni into his mouth. Sure, I said, handing him the remote. And thanks, I said around a mouthful of hot cheese that I quickly chased with Coke. You are too easy, Bree, Thomas chuckled, balancing his plate on his lap. Easy? Excuse me? He waved the remote in front of my face. Darn you! Language, Bree, he teased. What if we compromise and watch something scary? No action for me, no teen heartthrob for you. That is so not why I wanted to watch that, I exclaimed, blowing on the pizza before taking another bite. But that's fine, just not too scary, or you'll be walking me home tonight. He rolled his eyes as he crossed the room to turn off the lights before sitting close enough to graze my arm with his. We ended up eating our way through 2 frozen pizzas and a whole bag of chips before the movie really picked up. It wasn't too scary, no dead people coming back to life or haunted houses. It was more of a drama than a horror flick, about an unexpected family being watched by a sociopathic neighbor. I was so into the movie I barely registered Thomas's arm stretching behind me, but when his hand landed on my shoulder and pulled me closer to his chest, I sat ramrod straight. Thomas, what are you doing? Looking at me like I was the crazy one, he tilted his head. Since when can I not put my arm around you? Since you haven't done it in nearly 4 years, I said, mimicking his wide-eyed expression. He arched a brow and pulled me close again. Thomas, I'm serious. Every time we get too close, it just seems like it ends badly. I want us to be friends. He sighed, muting the screams on the screen. Look, Bree, I know things have been messed up between us since I came back, but that's my fault. It has nothing to do with you. What if I give you my word that nothing bad will come out of this? He gestured between the two of us. It feels like home with you here, Bree, and I miss holding you. Lord, give me strength. I miss it too, Thomas, but nothing, he said, his arm bringing me to rest close to his side. Friends cuddle. True, I'd cuddled with Drew's friends, Chase more times than I could count while we'd watched movies in Katie's basement. I'd even cuddled with Drew a few times, with Katie's permission, of course. But this was different on so many levels. For one, they weren't Thomas. And 2, they weren't Thomas. Who was I kidding? Thomas and I would never be friends, not like I wanted us to be. At least not now. There was just too much history. Stop overthinking this, Bree, and watch the movie, he whispered, his warm breath touching my ear. Oh yeah, that was sure to help. Trying to get back into the movie, I snuggled down further into the couch cushion, drawing my legs beneath me. Thomas readjusted his arm across my back as I laid my head against his shoulder. His warmth seemed to radiate along my skin, and despite the muscles I enjoyed watching when he worked, he was comfortably soft. He felt even better than I remembered. The fresh scent of his soap lingered on his skin, making me want to turn my face into his shirt and breathe him in, but instead I kept my eyes focused on the screen. Thomas shifted several times, even getting up for another Coke at one point, but I hadn't moved, and my legs were going numb beneath me. Just before the credits, I couldn't take it anymore and turned with my back against Thomas and stretched my legs across the couch. Naturally, Thomas wrapped his arms around my waist and stretched the length of me, his back to the opposite arm of the couch. I had to keep reminding myself that this was no different than cuddling with my friends, that his heart beating against my back and his warm breath in my hair meant nothing. Friends. Friends. If I mentally repeated it, perhaps I could force it to be true. When the credits finally rolled, Thomas didn't move. I could tell from his even breaths that he'd fallen asleep, and I hated to wake him, but I needed to move. Thomas? I whispered, patting the arm that lay over my stomach. Nothing. Thomas? I turned, surprised to find his eyes open and peering down at me. I thought you'd fallen asleep. Not asleep. Just not ready to let you go yet, he sighed contently, giving me a gentle squeeze. Look, I know I said nothing else would happen, and if that's what you want, I'll stand by it. He touched his finger to my lips to stop my argument before slowly dragging it down my chin. But I want to kiss you, Breland. Looking from his expectant dark eyes to his lips, the only light coming from the nearly dark television screen, I threaded my hand up the back of his hair. It was just long enough to brush between my fingers. You don't know how badly I want that right now, I said as his lips neared, barely brushing mine. But it hurts too much, Thomas. I can't go there again. Not when I knew he would only push me away. I'm not going to hurt you, Breland, he said adamantly. The low light from the television cast shadows over us, making his features softer, nearly identical to the picture my mind had clung to in his absence. His voice whispered my name against my lips as I breathed him in, good and deep. I wanted to believe him, to lose myself in him and never resurface. I wasn't used to something holding me back. When I'd wanted to be friends with Katie, I'd taken off through the fields alone at the tender age of 5 to introduce myself. When the skies darkened the summer before last and a funnel cloud hovered just beyond our property, I was the first one out of the cellar when Addie got out of the barn. Even with Thomas, whether it was sneaking past druggies to bring him food or sneaking him into my bedroom to keep him safe, I'd never been afraid. But I was afraid now. Afraid I'd been enough for the boy, but wasn't enough for the man who had experienced life in ways most hoped to avoid. Afraid of another rejection, because deep down he knew it too. You already have. My voice broke on the last word. I bit my lip to keep the angry tears at bay. Why couldn't he just leave me alone? Bree? He grasped my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes when I tried to look away. What did I do? I shook my head, cinching my eyes shut. Look, I'm sorry I had to leave. I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye, Bree, but I was a kid. I didn't know what else to do. He wiped my eyes, a stubborn tear broke free. Please, Bree, don't cry. He sat up on his knees, pulling me with him until we were face to face in the darkness. It's not that, I sniffed, angry with myself for letting him see me like this. I'm over it. And I was. I couldn't pinpoint when, but I'd forgiven him for leaving. I pulled out of his grasp, running my fingers through my hair to get it out of my face, as much as I ever will be. Then what did I do? Tell me how to fix this. The other women, Thomas, I started, knowing he would take my words the wrong way. I didn't begrudge him being with other women. I just wanted to be one of them. All the women you were with after you left. He sighed heavily, staring at the ceiling. I know you said there weren't that many, but there were some, right? Yes, Bree, I'm not going to lie to you. There were a few, but never anyone like you, like we were, not even close. Did you, make love to them? The words fought me coming out, mostly because I already knew the answer, but the masochist in me needed to hear him say it. Did I have sex with them? He shifted nervously, clasping his hands in front of him as he braced himself on his thighs. Do you really want to talk about this? Not the details, no, but I do want to know. Yes, Bree, he said, looking over at me before casting his eyes to the floor. I know how cliché this sounds, but it didn't mean anything. He could make love to a woman he didn't care for, but he could barely kiss me without pushing me away. With his face in his hands, he sighed. You're killing me, Breland. Tell me what you're thinking. If it's the women, I'm sorry about that too. I was alone, and I know it doesn't erase the past, but I hated myself afterwards. All it did was magnify how low I'd sunk, how much I missed you. It's not the women, I admitted. Not really. It's me, Thomas. His hands fell from his face as he stared, perplexed, waiting for me to continue. It's just that I thought I meant more. Just forget it. You told me you didn't want to lose your job over, I could barely get the words out, meaningless sex. But then when you kissed me, I guess I thought you'd changed your mind. But then you pushed me away again. Am I not good enough even for that? He stared at me for what felt like forever, processing my words as the understanding in his eyes clouded with anger. His voice shook with the frustration he was clearly trying to contain. He grasped my hands and moved to the floor in front of me. Breland, you could not be more wrong, he started, shaking his head with his lips pressed in a firm line. I can't believe you've been walking around thinking that was why I pushed you away all this time. When we went shopping? When you helped me paint? He paused for confirmation, but I stubbornly looked away. During the movie tonight? I nodded. Do you really think I don't want you? Sitting up on his knees so we were closer to eye level, he held my face in both hands and looked intensely into my eyes. If I were less of a man, I'd take you into that bedroom and show you just how wrong you are. Breland, I have wanted you since the first time I saw you across Katie's front yard. And then to come back and see the beautiful woman you've grown into. Do you have any idea how many nights I've spent awake just knowing you were sleeping down the hall, imagining what you were doing, wondering if you were thinking about me? He shook as if shaking off a chill. Hell, I was so tongue-tied the first few days I got here, I couldn't bring myself to speak to you. I was afraid you'd shoot me down. That's ridiculous. That's the truth. Then after seeing you with Jenny and your parents, how warm and caring, I knew I'd never be good enough. If you knew half the things I've done just to get by, you'd realize I'm not worth the dirt you walk on. That's why I pushed you away. Look what I've done already. Knowing you deserve 1,000,000 times better, I still very nearly took you the other night for myself. And then tonight, if you hadn't started crying like a little baby. You are my weakness, Breland, but you deserve better than what I can offer tonight. My head was spinning. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Watching him intently, I asked, Do you love me, Thomas? Are you kidding me right now? He said, pulling me from the couch to straddle him on the floor. After that spiel, and you still have to ask. I love you, Breland. You are the smartest, most thoughtful, and most devastatingly beautiful woman I have ever met in my life. His eyes pleaded for acceptance. I could feel it down to my bones. Feeling a new sense of power at his revelation, I leaned close to his ear and breathed. You can kiss me now, Thomas. He sighed, with his eyes closed tightly. Are you absolutely sure? Because if you stop me again... I lightly brushed my lips over his until he opened his eyes. The fire there scorched me from head to toe. Tugging gently on his lower lip, he finally gave in. Bree, he gasped, gripping my back and pulling me until our stomachs met. His mouth explored mine like it'd never been there before, and it never had, not like this, not without fear of being walked in on, or fear of the other's thoughts. This was raw and bare, beautiful, like I'd always imagined it would be. With his hand supporting my thighs, he lifted me up. I wrapped my legs around his waist. Couch or bed, he breathed, kissing along my collarbone. Bed, I moaned as he pulled my shirt and bra strap off my shoulder, giving it a playful nip. He chuckled against my skin as he moved us back to the couch, kissing his way up to my mouth. I promise, his tongue flicked the roof of my mouth. One day I'm going to take you to that bedroom and show you exactly what I've had on my mind all these years. He pulled his shirt off and dropped it to the floor. But you won't be walking back across that street to your parents' house afterwards. Breathing heavily, I scooted up away from him. His eyes playful, he reached out and pulled me back down. Oh no, where do you think you're going? Why not tonight? He tried kissing me, but I turned my head. You said you wanted me. You said you loved me. What are you waiting for? I sounded breathless and needy, but I didn't care. He was the first boy I'd ever wanted like this. He was the only one I'd ever wanted, period. For you to say yes. Yes, I said instantly. He laughed, stealing my hands from his belt buckle and holding them above my head. Don't you want to know what you're saying yes to? Using my legs to bring him closer, I answered. Not at the moment. Fine, he said, releasing his hold and sitting back on his knees. Do you want to go tell your folks, or do you think I should ask your daddy first? He paused, looking toward the window in deep thought. I better ask. He'll be expecting it. My mouth dropped. Was he out of his ever-loving mind? We couldn't get married. I was only 18, starting college in the fall, and Daddy would want nothing more than for his little girl to move right across the street. Before I could string enough letters together to create a word, Thomas lost it. You should see your face, he laughed heartily. I punched him in the gut and tried without success to push him away as he started playfully tickling my sides. You're such a jerk, I managed, unable to stop myself from laughing too. After finally convincing him to stop, I lay back breathless, a million different emotions coursing through my mind as he watched me intently. Would it really be so bad? He asked, a seriousness to his emerald eyes that didn't match the playfulness in his voice as he stroked my hair from my forehead. You know, because I could get used to you doing my laundry. Laundry? That's a big commitment, I contemplated teasingly. And at our age, what would people say? Leaning down and planting a soft kiss to my lips that I wanted to last much longer, he shuffled in behind me and reached for the remote. You're right. We better just stick to pretending to watch movies and making out on the couch. Hey now, I watched the stupid movie. He smirked, knowing me so well it was truly irritating. Fine, I may have missed a few scenes, but that's not the point anyway. Turning the TV off, I heard the remote hit the dark floor with a thud. So, what is the point? I could barely make out his face in the sudden darkness, but I could feel his sweet, warm breath touch my cheek just before I felt the softness of his lips. What was the point? Oh, yeah. I never said we had to stay on the couch. He chuckled against my lips. You kind of did. Giving me a slow, deep kiss, the kind great books are written about, he suddenly pulled away and reached for his shoes. I better get you home before it gets much later, he said, already on his feet and reaching for my hand. Could I even stand after that kiss? Thinking of a million different ways I could get him to change his mind, I said the only thing a rational woman could say in my position. Let's get married, Thomas. He looked dazed for half a second before a half smile tugged at his lips. Breland, I know you've got a thing for me, but this is practically our first date in nearly 5 years. I think you're moving a bit fast. He shielded his man parts just before I made connection. Laughing, he pulled me up from the couch and kissed my forehead before starting for the door. Looking longingly at his beautiful face cast in the shadows of the night as he opened the door, I stopped. I'm serious, Thomas. We could do this. He chuckled, giving me a sideways glance as he pulled us through the open screen door. I've thought about it. I'm sure you have, he said, his voice in no way hiding the innuendo. No, I countered, clearing my suddenly parched throat, because forgive me, but I'd thought about that just as much. No, I mean marrying you, staying on the farm. You're a bit hormonal right now, Bree, he laughed as we neared my yard. Granted, I chuckled too, stepping into the light triggered by the motion detector on the porch. But I love you. I love you too, he said, pulling me to his chest, which is why you have to go inside right now. When will I see you again? I asked, as if he were going off to war and not stepping back across the street. Hearing the thinly veiled desperation in my voice, he bit his lip, seeming to reconsider before shaking it off. Tomorrow. Our spot, down by the fields. With his hands in his pockets, he took a step backwards toward the road. I hear it's good at keeping crows away, he winked. Your daddy is sure to appreciate that. Thomas was right about one thing. It did keep the crows away. Not nary a one bothered our fields for the rest of that summer, but he was wrong about Daddy, hence the scarecrow that marked our meeting place every year after. The End. Epilogue. 1 year later. There's plenty of hot water if you want to take a shower before dinner, I called over my shoulder as I finished slicing the cucumber I'd picked from the garden this morning. Sneaking up behind me and slipping his massive, rough hands around my waist, I felt the warmth of Thomas's lips run the length of my neck. Is that your polite way of telling me I stink? Gingerly turning around in his arms, I planted a gentle kiss on his lips, reveling in the familiar sweet taste that transcended time with its butterfly-inducing effects. When have you ever known me to be polite? Reaching behind me and turning off the stove, he grabbed my thighs and hoisted my legs around his waist. Couch or bed? I felt his lips curve against my skin as we stepped into the last rays of sunshine streaking through the living room curtains. For late September, the summer heat was still hanging in there. It had been a record high of 102 degrees today. Yet another thing that was different about this fall. The first being, I wouldn't be hitting the books alone this year. Thomas had enrolled in an agricultural business program, so he would be able to keep me company on the long winter nights of studying ahead. Lord help us. The second change we'd been blessed with was Daddy deeding the house and back 10 acres to us as a wedding gift. Yes, I said wedding, which brings me to the third and most important difference about this fall, the gold ring around my finger. After Daddy and Mama had given their blessing, we wasted no time tying the knot. It was as simple could be, just close family and friends gathered beneath the star-filled sky in the middle of the same field where we'd first met. The neighborhood kids had worked for hours filling mason jars with lightning bugs to line an aisle for me to walk down. Mama and Katie had helped me find a sheer, lace-covered white dress that was just long enough to hide my bare feet. Thomas bought a new pair of jeans and a hunter green button-up shirt that made his eyes look incredible for the occasion. We exchanged vows beneath a wooden arch Daddy had constructed and Mama had decorated with sunflowers, before digging into the catered barbecue Thomas's dad had arranged to be here in his absence. It was a breathtakingly perfect and long-awaited night that brought about the final and hands-down most delectable difference in my life. You see, Thomas is a very good promise-keeper. He had been adamant that the next time he made love, or had meaningless sex, as he still teasingly referred to it, would be to his wife. So as soon as the final piece of blackberry cobbler had been dished out, we'd hastily made our escape. "Bree," Thomas breathed, playfully slapping my bottom and giving me the look that Southern boys have passed down from generation to generation. "Couch or bed?" "Bed," I whispered against his lips as he towed us through the bedroom door, fulfilling his promise again. Thank you for reading Saving Thomas. If you enjoyed Breland and Thomas's story, be sure to check out Cecilia and Lakin's story in The Rainmaker, coming in the summer of 2021. Theirs is a love that is out of this world. A.L. Moore is also the author of The General Store and is a graduate of the University of South Carolina. She discovered a love for writing at a young age, filling notebooks with poetry and short stories. She resides in South Carolina with her husband and 2 children. Her books are available for purchase through Amazon. Acknowledgements. Books are a mental vacation, and like most vacations, require a bit of a road trip or journey. This book was no different, and I am forever grateful for those who traveled the road with me. First and foremost, I want to thank our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for giving me the imagination to not only come up with the characters and alternate realities in my head, but for the ability to get them down on paper. Without him, nothing is possible. My sister, best friend, and impromptu editor, M.M., for pushing through the roughest of rough drafts and never complaining, for loving my characters as much as I do, and for always answering the phone no matter how many times I call for reassurance. Thanks for being my shadow self. My husband and boys for sharing me with the voices in my head, and for the endless love and support. All of the readers and writers I've met through Goodreads and writers of Instagram for sharing knowledge and providing advice that has helped me to grow as a writer. My Uncle R for his selfless promotion to all who will listen, and to all of my family for supporting my dream. I love you all.